Have podcasters and comedians ruined the presidential election of 2024? Let's find out. With less than a week to go, Trump and Harris are level on the polls, depending on who you ask, obviously. I think the Twitter poll of Elon Musk says that Donald Trump's about 80%. But in general, Harris is winning some, Trump's winning others. It looks very level pegging. Did the Joe Rogan interview give Trump a meaningful boost? Or did his pal Tony Hinchcliffe just reverse the Rogan effect by making a joke about Puerto Rico at a rally? But let's listen to the joke first before we jump to any conclusions.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay.
First of all, it's a shit joke. But comedy is in the eye of the beholder. And at a comedy club, that wouldn't be that risky. I've heard a lot worse. I'm not offended, but I am not from Puerto Rico. Many people enjoy the work of Tony Hinchcliffe. Even myself, I used to enjoy Kill Tony briefly for a wee while. I used to see random clips that featured some comedians that I do like, and it seemed decent. Kind of like X Factor for open mic comics. Scripted, cruel, and in front of a live studio audience. But the more I watched it, the less I could enjoy it, as the format quickly repeated itself over and over again, and the sheer smugness of host Tony Hinchcliffe very quickly started to grate on me personally. Especially as the success went to his head and the Netflix money entered his bank account. When the opposing side is accusing you of being Nazis, then it might not be the best time to try out edgy jokes that make you look a little bit like a Nazi. His whole career was built upon sticking the boot into people who make jokes that are not well received. And I do not believe that this joke has been well received. I also don't believe in the censorship of comedy, but very aware that this was a stupid thing to do a week before the election, especially when there's 500,000 voters of Puerto Rican descent in a swing state of Pennsylvania. But Tony isn't the only comedy podcaster in amongst it. Joe Rogan gave Trump about 3 hours on the biggest platform in the world. And that went well for the former president, who's seeking to become president again so he can change the laws so he doesn't go to jail. So what did Donald Trump actually do last time? What did he do? But also, what has the current vice president done in the last 4 years that was of any note? They both seem like horrific options. So that's why anything can happen at this stage. Trump hiring the likes of that muppet Elon Musk, who wants to take charge of the economy. And then you've got Robert Kennedy Jr. wanting to take charge of health. What's next? Is he going to hire Andrew Schultz to be in charge of the biggest military industrial complex on the planet? It just doesn't make very good decisions, man. And I'm in Scotland, but his decisions are so bad that they'll affect me somehow. Eventually, it'll trickle down, and Scotland's affected. So that's why you've got to pay attention, because we kind of just follow whatever America does for the most part. And then there's also comedians that I like, people like Theo Von and Tim Dillon. I've been interviewing Trump's number 2, J.D. Vance, over the last week. And to me, it's just so surreal seeing how these sort of Rogan Sphere podcast world is now slap bang in the middle of deciding something so big. And why is this happening? A couple of reasons. One, it's taken over from mainstream media. Joe Rogan always talks about mainstream media, unaware that he is now the mainstream media his show is bigger than anyone else's shows, probably all the shows put together. But the other thing is that you've got Dana White, the UFC owner, is friends with Trump and he's friends with all these comedians. And also, who wouldn't want to interview Donald Trump? I'd do it. If he wants to try and convince 4,000 voters in the swing state of Denniston, then he can come on this show. The problem I have is not the fact that they gave him a platform. It's just the fact, I don't want to use the word glazing because that just seems to be a word that Americans use and it's coming over here. There's an example of American culture infecting Scotland. Glazing. It's just the fact that there is no pushback on anything when there is so much at stake. This isn't just the middle of a random week. This is the week before election and Donald Trump's on there just repeating the same talking points over and over again. And occasionally they ask him about sports or something. There's been zero chat about the insurrection or any discussions about the various crimes the guy has been found guilty of or is soon to be found guilty of. Obviously, if he becomes president, it will make it so he can't be found guilty of anything. I mean, this is why he's running. He's running this time to keep himself out the jail. You don't actually think he's doing it to make the country better? You surely don't believe that. I mean, I get that you don't like Harris. You know, I've seen some, she looks steaming half the time.
Never let anyone take your joy from you. You do what you gotta do.
The comedy circuit, the podcast circuit, they like Trump. He's 1,000% more entertaining than Harris is. But I also think that they've been seduced by power, confused by money, and have quiet ambitions to turn the White House into a hangout for all their comedian friends, like the good old days of the Comedy Store. They want Trump to win so that they can be even closer to the top of the food chain because they kind of helped him win if he does win. And I think that's what stops him from thinking too much about the consequences of their actions. They know that the guy's a liar. They know he's a liar. They know he's not to be trusted. But they quite like the idea of him winning so they can say, well, you know, I helped you, you can help me, and maybe we can just hang about the White House whenever we want. So some people are helping Trump for nefarious reasons, and others are just doing it because they wanted to interview Trump, and others are just not really thinking about it because they quite like the idea of being in the White House in some level. It's a story. It's a story to tell folk, innit? Backstage at the Comedy Mothership. Remember that time we got the president elected? And then he did some mad stuff. And that's if he doesn't do any mad stuff. I mean, on the plus side, he might not actually do that much mad stuff. He seems quite tired. He might just change the laws so he doesn't go to jail and just not do anything. But it's not about Trump, it's about who is funding Trump, who is behind him. What is J.D. Vance's ambitions like? What is Elon Musk going to do with all that power? That's much more terrifying than what Trump's going to do. So in closing, I just think that some of these podcast interviews could age like milk if it all kicks off. But a week's a long time in politics, so I'm sure there's a good chance that my thoughts will age badly as well. But I only have about 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, 6,000 on Facebook, and about the same again on Apple and Spotify. So there's a lot less pressure on me to be right about anything. So I think Trump doing Rogan really helped him. Getting Vance and other podcasts helped him. Getting Tony on to do racist jokes might have undid all the good work. So when Trump says they stole the election from him, please remind Donald Trump, the guy who stole the election was Tony Hinchcliffe. Now this is the bit where most people would say, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon at patreon.com/YouCallThatRadio. But that's something that I would never, ever, ever do.